Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. The scandal that was unearthed by General Mkhwanazi that implicates drug dealers, politicians, police officers is not over. And there are specifically 3 updates that you need to be aware of. Number 1, there's a Lesotho angle to the story. Number 2, General Masemola has actually clarified his version of what happened with the disbanding of the political killings task team. And number 3, Katiso Molefe was applying for bail today. And that's something in and of itself that's interesting because certain revelations were made as the prosecutors were opposing his bail. So let's go to the first story, the Lesotho angle to the story. So the opposition party in Lesotho, the Basotho National Party, the BNP, has actually sent formal correspondence to the Prime Minister of Lesotho, Sem Matekane. And they've sent him a formal question. They've asked him if the alleged gangster Vusumuzi Matlala attended his inauguration in October of 2022. That's a serious question. They also wanted to know whether the Prime Minister of Lesotho has actually visited Matlala at any given point at his Gauteng residence. So 2 questions. 1, did he come to your inauguration? And 2, have you ever been to his home? So the gentleman who actually asked this is the leader of the BNP party, Macheseta Mufombe. He claims that he was told by sources that actually there is a relationship between the Prime Minister of Lesotho and Vusumuzi Matlala after the arrests which were made of Vusumuzi Matlala. So the person actually said that Matlala was at the Prime Minister's inauguration and that the Prime Minister visited him while he was in his residences in Gauteng. This is a serious allegation. So the spokesperson of the Prime Minister has said the Prime Minister is waiting for guidance and he's waiting for a decision from the clerk and the Speaker of the National Assembly in Lesotho as to when he can answer those questions in Parliament. So this is quite explosive. It's quite explosive. If you think about it, on the South African side, the Minister of Police, who's on leave, special leave, whatever leave you want to call it, implicated in having a relationship with this particular gangster. Now, on the other side, you've got a whole Prime Minister implicated in having a relationship. It's a big story. The idea that the Prime Minister of Lesotho is involved or at some level has relationships between this particular, between himself and these gangsters and these syndicates actually, leads to serious concerns about the nature of the relationships between the high-profile politicians, the underworld in the SADC region. And we must remember that General Mkhwanazi said that they had uncovered a syndicate with a national footprint, but also with a regional footprint. Crime in Africa is actually transnational. There are multiple different actors involved. This actually reminds me of how the president of Namibia had to do lots of explaining as well in terms of his knowledge and involvement in the recovery of the money that was stolen from Palapala Farm. Do you remember that story? So President Cyril Ramaphosa's people, for instance, General Wally Rood, went into Namibia to investigate and to try to recover the money. Then, at a certain point, after all of this was discovered, the president of Namibia had to explain, and the Namibian was covering the story. And there were reports that Benjani Chauke, who was serving as President Ramaphosa's principal advisor between 2018 and 2023, and was also one of the instrumental people in the CR17 campaign for the presidency, he actually went and met the Namibian president at the time, Hage Geingob, in a secret meeting on the 27th of June 2020. And this was a few months after the money had been stolen. And we know this because a statement was submitted by the crime intelligence officer, Mohammed Imran Haider, to the public protector when she was doing her investigation. And then he revealed that there was this meeting between Benjani Chauke and Geingob, which happened days after a certain colonel who's known as Joreen Edwards had submitted a report. So Joreen Edwards, the colonel, is a former South African Police Service liaison officer to Namibia. So he filed 2 reports. And those reports were pertaining to the arrest of Emanuela David, who was the prime suspect in the money that was stolen from the Palapala farm. And that was after the robbery had occurred, I think on the 20th of February or thereabouts, in February of 2020, sorry. And if my memory serves me correctly, one of the people who was involved with the recovery efforts was actually Paul O'Sullivan, the same guy who has been talking about Mkhwanazi, talking about Masemola very aggressively. So all of this is, remind me of that particular story, because Vusumuzi Matlala, now the Prime Minister of Lesotho, the underworld seems to be operating also. So as things stand, what we seem to get an indication of is that the underworld seems to be operating in the illegal mining industry, in the kidnapping industry, in the firearms trade, in the drug business. There's also a counterfeit alcohol industry which seems to be spreading. And that's where the DJs and the nightclubs become implicated and involved and mired in all of this, because the nightclubs are the distribution points of these illegal drugs. The nightclubs are also part of the money laundering operations where the proceeds from the sale of these illegal drugs cleansed and cleaned and laundered and become legitimate. And if you think about it, the gangs also fit in here, because the gangs are the ones who are selling these particular drugs and firearms within communities. And this is how you end up having links between Ralph Steinfeld, DJ Somebody, DJ Vintos, Vusumuzi Matlala. All of these characters seem to be linked in this particular way. So Vusumuzi Matlala himself seems to have been involved in all of these illegal activities and to have been coordinating a lot of these illegal activities. And now there's an allegation, insinuation, implication that the Prime Minister of Lesotho is involved. The illegal mining question, the Zama Zama question, seems to be relevant as well here, because we've sometimes heard that the Lesotho nationals are heavily involved in the illegal mining activities. So all of these things seem to be interconnected, and it may explain why certain ministers have also been very vocal in saying that they would smoke out the illegal miners, etc. There may be some kind of contestation happening between all of these various subsects within the criminal underworld. But I think the connection between the Prime Minister, the illegal mining industry, as well as now Vusumuzi Matlala, considering what else he's implicated in, is quite interesting. So that's update number one in terms of what's been going down. So the second update is that we've gotten more details about how the political killings task team was disbanded, who was involved, who was not involved, and what are the allegations. And typically, and not typically, importantly, what happened to the dockets. Because people want to know what happened to the dockets. How did the dockets end up where they ended up? So we now know from the court papers more details about what happened at the police head office level with the disbanding of the political killings task team and the handling of the dockets. So the National Police Commissioner, Masemola, has actually said that Shadrack Sibiya did not disband the political killings task team with his approval. Sibiya has approached the North Gauteng High Court to reverse his suspension, his paid leave, special leave, whatever you want to call it. He wants the order overturned. He wants to return to work. So the minister disbanded the political killings task team on the 31st of December. Right? That's Senzo Mkhunu, the minister on special leave, if you will. So he sent a letter to Masemola to disband that task team. Masemola was on leave. He was on leave at the time that the letter was sent to him, right? And remember, there are 121 dockets that the political killings task team said were taken away from them. On the 2nd of January, Shadrack Sibiya says he received an email which was instructing him to communicate the deactivation of the task team and to submit what is known as a close-up report. And he says he got that correspondence from Masemola's office on the 2nd of January. Masemola says, I couldn't have done this. I didn't do this, right? And I'll explain more. So Sibiya says that he attempted to get the dockets, right, that the 121 dockets, to be sent to the KZN murder and robbery units. But General Mkhwanazi refused and told him that he should take those cases. Now, what Masemola is saying is that this is not true. He was on leave at the time when the directive to disband the political killings task team was sent by the minister. He says that he only met with Shadrack Sibiya on the 14th of January, 2 weeks later, and that Sibiya presented him with a plan, a letter, a proposal, however you want to frame it, on how to disband the political killings task team. And Masemola says that he was actually not satisfied with the proposal that came from Sibiya and informed Shadrack Sibiya that it would be irresponsible to disband the task team, to remove the dockets from them, because it would have a detrimental effect on the investigation of the cases. And this makes sense. They would have had the institutional memory to give these to a new set of investigators. It wouldn't have made sense. They wouldn't have had the institutional memory, wouldn't have done the research, wouldn't have spoken to key witnesses, wouldn't have certain notes. Even if there is a handover, some of that institutional knowledge would be lost. So Masemola is saying that contrary to his instructions, he gave instructions to Shadrack Sibiya. He says that contrary to his direct instructions, Shadrack Sibiya issued a directive for the political killings task team to immediately hand over dockets to the head office and for its members to be redeployed. So Masemola says that those dockets were then removed from investigators and they remained dormant at the head office, and they were not assigned to any investigators, and there was no plan for future investigations. So those dockets were taken by Sibiya to head office, according to Masemola. He says he had nothing to do with the disbanding. He had nothing to do with the dockets. And in fact, Sibiya acted against his instructions and his directive. So Masemola says upon making inquiries, it appeared to him that Shadrack Sibiya might have deliberately ignored his instructions and acted contrary to his obligations in terms of his appointment, which is what necessitated on his side an investigation as to his intentions, his motives, and his interest in the disbanding of the political killings task team. And he's saying to the court in his papers that it would have not been possible to do an investigation into Shadrack Sibiya and his motives, as many of the witnesses that they would have to speak to report directly to Shadrack Sibiya and would be intimidated by his presence in the office and would be likely not to cooperate with the investigation. So that's his explanation. And it makes sense. He's going to have to prove to the courts that it was rational and reasonable and lawful for him to actually put Shadrack Sibiya on special leave. And that part, I think, makes clear sense. But also, now we are getting more clarity around this controversial decision to disband the political killings task team. And it's important for me to just mention that it's never made sense to me why that task team was dissolved, even today, because we've seen that political killings have not stopped. We've also seen that, the violence, the intimidation is not abating necessarily. And we're also going to elections. There are local government elections coming up next year. And because of the amount of whistleblowers and municipal auditors, accountants who are being killed, it seems to me that just disbanding the task team was not a rational, reasonable, or a decision that is in the interest of the public, which seeks to have, the people who are participating in this horse curry behavior, this tenderpreneurship fraud, to be held accountable. One of the reasons why many people don't want to be part of mainstream politics is because it's not safe. People get killed. We've seen auditors, whistleblowers, politicians like Sandiso Makaka being killed for trying to expose corruption, fraud, embezzlement, all types of behavior. The horse curry behavior by these horse curry daddies has actually led to people losing their lives, to intimidation. So the disbanding of the task team never made sense. And it does seem as if Sibiya was overly interested in the disbanding of the team. It seems he was interested in getting hold of those 121 dockets. That's a large number of dockets. 121. I think it's going to be important for the different bodies, the Commission of Inquiry, the ad hoc committee in Parliament, to actually establish what each of those dockets were investigating. In fact, if we had strong, robust media looking into this, we would have all of the dockets, all of the allegations being put into a spiderweb thing, because someone somewhere in those dockets knows something, and the allegations there seem to have precipitated everything that has played out. So I think if we could get a golden thread analysis of what is happening in those 121 dockets, most of this would be solved. We would have clarity on everything that has been breaking down. So that's something that needs to be determined and something that needs to be clarified. And I hope that members of Parliament at least will ask, let us talk about the nature of the allegations that were being investigated, the dockets, the charges, everything that was in those dockets. We need clarity because those 121 dockets are important. They are at the middle of this saga and everything that has played out. The motives for the disbanding of that task team lie in those dockets. The accused in those dockets, the evidence in those dockets, the documents, the files, the photos, the WhatsApp messages, whatever is in those dockets. That's the heart of this whole story, this whole saga. Tupac wants to know what was in those dockets because that is where the movie is. Can't have another song without knowing what is in those dockets. So that's the second update. The third update relates to the bail application that was made by Katiso Molefe. So Katiso Molefe is back in court trying to get bail. He was in court today trying to do a bail application. Remember, he was arrested for allegedly being the paymaster in the DJ Somebody murder trial, which that arrest was on the 21st of July, just a few weeks after Mkhwanazi's explosive fiasco Sunday. So we know that DJ Somebody was murdered in November of 2022, and the firearm has linked itself to various individuals, right? So that arrest on the 21st of July, that's the arrest that caught Kenny Kunene of the Patriotic Alliance in a world of drama because the cops found him at the house of this alleged criminal mastermind, paymaster, who's got a whole hit squad doing political killings allegedly. And there you go into the yard, none other than the sushi king, Buddy of Gayton McKenzie in the yard. And interestingly, yesterday, Gayton McKenzie did an interview, or I don't know whether it was yesterday, but he did an interview with Penwell. And in the interview, he was suggesting that he got calls from the criminal underworld wanting to deal with the Open Chart podcast boys. So he says, I got these calls and I told them, no, I'm dealing with the issue. Don't do anything. I'm dealing with the issue. When I listened to that, I was like, wait a minute. It's kind of a flag. I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's a flag. There's a flag waving because of this. Because what I was thinking is, should these people who can take the kind of actions that Minister Gayton McKenzie is saying they can take, should they have the number of a minister? That's the first question. Where do they get his number? And then the second thing is how the minister is reading messages from these people. These people who say that they've got the means and the resources to delete human beings from the plane of existence and send them to the ancestral plane. This suggests to me that there are some kind of long-standing relationships with these people. And then when you take it together with the Kenny Kunene presence at the mansion of Molefe, it leads to questions. I don't know the answers to those questions, but I do think the minister must go to the commission. He must go to the ad hoc committee. They must ask him some questions. Who called you talking about the Open Chat podcast boys threatening that they're going to deal with them, asking you for particulars or whatever they were asking you for? What is your relationship with these people? Why are you talking to these people? You're so busy. How do you have time to read WhatsApp messages from people that you think are from the criminal underworld? To even get to the point of calling them, why would they listen to you? So even if you tell them, I'm dealing with it, why would a gangster listen to you? What authority do you have over them as the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture to the point where they can say, oh, okay, Mackenzie's dealing with it, let me back off? I think there are legitimate questions around all of that, especially considering that your very close friend was found in the vicinity of somebody who's accused of very serious allegations. You know, he's been charged also with the murder of DJ Vintos, who was killed earlier in March of 2022. So Molefe has been in and out of courts for murder allegations, murder charges, right? He's somebody who is seriously implicated. And we now have additional details. And the reason how he's been implicated, just to refresh your memory, is that the AK-47 rifle has been determined through the ballistic reports to have been used in a variety of murders and attempted murders. So DJ Vinto is another person who was shot in Orlando East in March of 2022. The co-accused in this case are Musa Kikana, Michael Puletau, and Floyd Mabusela. Now, Michael Puletau is a former police officer. He was a detective in Gauteng for a long period of time. And in the bail application, which occurred at the Alexander Magistrate Court, we heard that Malef is actually being accused of being involved in the illicit drug trade, not just in the hits, but involved in the illicit drug trade, and that the killings of DJ Somebody, DJ Vintos are linked to this underworld activity. In other bail applications, we also heard that this guy has multiple passports. I think they said he's got over 6 passports. He's been traveling up and down on passports that cannot be verified, which is why he's a flight risk. And in fact, the way that he got bail was very peculiar the first time, precipitating this now second arrest. Imagine you got people who are accused of murder, multiple murders. They can get bail, they can be out in the streets, then they get arrested for another murder. That whole system, there's something not working with bail and bail application. Something's not working. Something's not working. So the time at which I went to do the recording, we actually don't know whether he was going to get bail or not. So I don't know whether he got it or not. But it's significant to know what the state is alleging and what the details are. The state is alleging that Malef orchestrated the murder of DJ Somebody, was gunned down in November 22, along with his 2 bodyguards, Busiso Mukwena and Sandile Mieza. And these 2 were also killed in that same shooting. Those bodyguards are interesting in this story because they're from the security company which was being run by Vusumuzi Matlala. So there is a connection between Vusumuzi Matlala, between Katiso Molefe, Brown Mkhotsi, allegedly the Minister of Police, allegedly Begitele, and allegedly now the Prime Minister of Lesotho. These are serious allegations. Very serious allegations. And this is the information which is coming out of the affidavit of the investigating officer. And Malef has been described in that affidavit as a dangerous individual with no regard for human life. Zero regard. The police have said that they have cell phone records as evidence. They've got communication between Malef, Tau, Mabusela, following DJ Somebody's murder. And according to that officer's affidavit, the WhatsApp messages suggest that Katiso Molefe was responsible for arranging payments of the alleged hitman in that particular killing of DJ Somebody. So that's a significant development. He was today appearing, trying to get bail. So the story's not gone away. There's a lot that's happening, but we mustn't lose focus. We mustn't forget. To me, it seems as if as a result of all of these developments, the statements that were made by General Mkhwanazi on Fiasco Sunday, on the 6th of July, they're holding up. They're holding up. I must say, I'm still perturbed, though, because the media is still calling this guy a businessman. Now they're adding controversial businessman, Katiso Molefe. I don't think they should do that. This tendency of calling these hosh-carry behavior leaders businessmen gives them legitimacy to navigate society without adequate scrutiny. Please, call them what they are: alleged drug dealers, alleged cartel bosses, alleged gang leader, etc. This will help the public, actually, if you think about it. Because if these guys are hanging out with politicians, the public can then take pictures and videos and show us if money is exchanging hands, if there are brown envelopes, brown bags, white purses on tables to bribe people. We need to know, because if you just think, oh, that's a politician hanging out with a businessman, you may miss something. Tell us who these people are, but also we need to be safe. Let us know if they're alleged drug dealers, etc. Because if I'm in a nightclub and certain characters come in, I want to be able to leave immediately before bullets start popping along with the bottles of champagne that are popping in that club. Right? Let us know. Also, so that we know which courthouses maybe we shouldn't go to on a particular day. Because remember, some witnesses get shot outside courthouses for our own safety. Don't be calling these people just businessman. Let us know so that we have an idea what's going on. I've got a final update, and it's such a positive update. Such a positive update that you need to be aware of. So people on X started fundraising. Chris Excel's one of the accounts that was doing this. They started fundraising to give cows to General Mkhwanazi for his brave action to whistleblow, to bring the public into confidence about all of the things that have been happening in the criminal underworld, in policing, and in the political circles. And General Mkhwanazi has now said that money, give it to the South African Police Educational Trust. This is what he announced.
This is Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, the Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Service in KwaZulu-Natal. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the ex-user by the name of Chris Excel, who came up with an initiative to raise funds in support of the work that police are doing to keep criminals at bay. Although this original idea, supported by those who contributed the money, was to buy cars for myself, I appreciate the gesture and the thoughts of goodwill behind the idea of contributing money. I'm a civil servant, and the public already thank me enough through the salary that I receive every month. It is their taxes that compensate us as public servants. And I'm privileged to have been one of those chosen few to serve and protect the people of South Africa through my role as a police officer. I therefore would like to ask Chris Excel and those who donated the money to please deposit the money to the South African Police Educational Trust. This is a fund which pays for educational needs of the children of the members of the South African Police Service who died in the line of duty. Every year we gather in a union building in Pretoria where we commemorate the members that died in the line of duty. A majority of these members died at a very young age and the very junior ranks, and therefore they have not contributed that much in terms of their pension, leaving behind the children that need support from us. The South African Police Service Educational Trust Fund takes care of these children by contributing to their educational needs. And we've already seen some of these children who have graduated as a result of the support of this fund. It is the least that the police can do to support the families and the children of our fallen colleagues. This SAPS Trust Fund is run by an independent board of trustees under the leadership of the chairperson, Mr. Vuyan Jahana. If Chris and all donors are in agreement with the proposal, the money should then be deposited to the following account. It is the Nedbank account number 100-33-59825. I repeat, Nedbank account number 100-33-59825. Account name is SAPS Educational Trust. You can use your name as a reference, or you can put any reference that you so wish if you don't want to be known. I'm making a call to everyone who may be able to donate any amount of money to the SAPS Educational Trust Fund to do so for the noble cause of maintaining dignity and securing the future of children of police officers who get to be brutally killed while serving and protecting innocent South Africans. Thank you very much.
This is a good initiative, and I'll also be making a contribution to the South African Police Educational Trust. I think the children of police who lost their parents do need support because their fathers, mothers made the ultimate sacrifice. You know, there are still good cops out there, and some of them are putting their lives on the line to fight crime, fight these criminals. And you know, in making this gesture or recommendation, I think General Mkhwanazi is showing his character. He's showing that he's really someone who is a custodian of the police, who's a police officer at heart. And I think it just strengthens his credibility. I think that, you know, as things stand right now, General Mkhwanazi should either be the next Minister of Police or the next police commissioner, or that even his contract right now should be extended. It will be a tragedy if they don't extend his contract. I think that this man has done a lot. He's put his life on the line. He's actually taken a lot of risks by standing up to the people who are involved within the circles of policing and, you know, the gangs and all of these other communities by fighting them face on, bringing the nation into confidence. And, you know, if he can't get his job back, at least give him the Hoshkari Behavior Investigative Unit, the HKBI. We need that. We need that. Because there's a lot happening with these Hoshkari mamas and Hoshkari fathers. Telling you, if you give General Mkhwanazi the resources to look into the lives of these tender benders, these Hoshkari daddies, granddaddies, Hoshkari mamas, I'm telling you, most of the crime that is associated with these tenders will be solved. I'm telling you. And Mkhwanazi has the heart to look into this stuff. Really, that initiative is good. those are the updates. I would like to ask you also to contribute, right, to this South African Police Education Trust. I think it's a great initiative, and I think it has a lot of needs, and if your father gave up his life fighting criminals, you definitely need to be supported to finish your education and at least be able to realize your parents' hopes and aspirations for you to have a career, to have a livelihood, and to live your dreams without that parent. So I think it's a great initiative. What a guy, General Mkhwanazi. What a guy. In a way, General Mkhwanazi is the Ibrahim Traore of South Africa right now. And that's what makes ministers nervous about him. That's what makes them nervous. That's what makes him think he's up to a coup or something, because they can see that this guy is always thinking about his constituency, the cops. He's always thinking about dealing with criminals. And he has gotten a lot of public confidence and trust as a result of that. And that's something that corrupt politicians detest. It makes them nervous. It makes them vengeful that there's such a person out there right now thinking about them. That gives them sleepless nights. I'm sure it does. Anyway, guys, that's all the time for this episode. Let's meet in the comments. What do you think about all these developments? Let's have a conversation. I'll catch you there.